Hello there, and great job writing a new set of essays for us. Well done. Let's see what you did in this set. Okay, let's get straight to it, shall we? So, okay, the issue has been debated whether getting married and having babies in people's 30s is an advantageous tendency or not. Although it would reduce young people's pressure, I believe that it must not be forgotten that this trend will cause negative problems in the long term. Okay, interesting. Let's see what you did. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that young people would benefit from the late marriage. Not the late marriage, but from marrying later. The central reason is that it allows them to have more time, uh, not on their working. It would allow them to have more time to work on their careers, and then they would have enough money to build a family and raise babies. For example, if young people get married and pregnant, careful with your spelling, just after they graduate with an E, it would be difficult for them to spare time to do housework, no S, and afford the fees of hiring, what? Okay, babysitters with the two T's, since they have relatively low salaries and the heavy working responsibility as they have just been working for a short time. All right, let's talk about this sentence, shall we? Look at where it starts. It starts all the way up here, and it ends all the way down here. So it's too long. Apart from that, grammatically, it has some problems in it, okay? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to rephrase this sentence and just fix it in a variety of ways, okay? Let's do it. One of the problems that it has is that it's too, you overgeneralize, okay? So not everybody who just starts out gets a low salary. I mean, there are some people who actually do really well and they don't have a low salary, and so you don't want to make an overgeneralization because they look at this in the band descriptors, so let's avoid it. So how do we want to say this? Okay, let's try it again. For example, if young people get married and pregnant just after they graduate, it might be difficult for them to have time for housework. I wouldn't even have said housework. Why? I mean, no, get rid of the housework. So it might be difficult for them to afford the fees of hiring babysitters since people just starting out typically have low salaries. Okay, so what have I done? I've been a little gentler. I haven't been so absolute saying that everybody who is young has a low salary. Okay? And I just shortened it by getting rid of some of that superfluous information. Okay, therefore, it is conclusively clear that there would be a heavy financial burden for young people who get married, A-R-R-I-E-D, yes, early. On the other hand, although there is a case for late marriage and even though there is a case for late marriage, even benefiting, get rid of this comma, get rid of the and then just say even benefiting youngsters' lives. The negative impact of it cannot be overstated. This is largely because young laborers, do you mean laborers, young workers, young employees? Maybe you mean young employees, would be less in the coming years and even cause an aging society in the long term. For instance, recent research by Harvard University demonstrated that there would be over 20% of an aging population in 2030 due to the late marriage. Consistent with this line of thinking is that if young people still insist on getting married late, they would have to face the dilemma of caring for more and more old people consequently. Okay. You lost me a little here. Getting married and giving birth in their 30s, positive or negative development? You're telling me it's a negative development, but I got to be honest with you, I didn't really follow your train of thought. There would be fewer laborers. Why? Oh, labors. I really don't know what you mean. Do you mean labor like births? Now I'm confused because I thought you meant labor like workers, but perhaps you mean there'd be births to young people. You see, this kind of mistake, it could be interpreted so many different ways that I now have completely lost the meaning of this paragraph. So you have to be really careful about this. Okay, and what you're essentially saying that I think, what you're essentially saying, I think, is that as people choose to get married later and later, what we have is an aging population. So our aging population gets larger and larger. People are getting married later and later. Having children later and later. And this also, there's another statistic that I might want to share with you, which is that when you get married later, these people typically have fewer children than those who get married earlier. So that's also a part of why the aging population gets larger. There's something happening here in this paragraph where I don't feel like a lot of these ideas were linked well. I had to really kind of suss them out and think about them a little bit. So I think you could have rewritten this to make it clearer to the reader. The last thing you want is for an examiner to have to read your paragraph like 2 or 3 times. It should be really self-explanatory and clear the first time if you hope to get a high score, okay? Unfortunately, I did have to read it a couple of times to kind of make sense out of it. All right, let's move on. In conclusion, I firmly believe that getting married late is not a positive trend, 1S, and I do not support young people doing it, ing, doing it, not to doing it, because it will bring heavy pressure on raising old people. It is predicted that early marriage will be encouraged in the future. Okay, fine. Again, some grammar issues, but on the whole, fine. All right, now let's talk about your task. 1, it's rain. The line chart gives an illustration of the changes of rainfall in England, Scotland, and Wales in 2018. Overall, the rainfall of England was the most among these 3 areas, while Wales, experienced the least rainfall during the same period. Okay, fair enough. As for Scotland and Wales without the, there was an opposite tendency in rainfall during well, that's not really the right expression. You could just say that they were inversely proportional. That's a nice expression to use. That one was high while one was low. The rainfall of Scotland dropped from 130 ml in January to 25, which was the lowest in February, and then it soared to 135 in March when it peaked. At the same time, Wales saw relatively steady rainfall between 50 and 75 ml from April to October. Scotland experienced a dramatic fluctuation in rainfall between 40 and 135, while the rainfall of Wales considerably fluctuated from 40 in April to 135, which is the maximum in July. I don't think you can really say the maximum. It was the peak, because maximum means that it can't go any higher. But that's not the case. It just happened not to go any further. So avoid the word maximum. Instead, say the peak. Then it decreased to 45 ml in August and stayed steady until October. For the last 2 months, it was evident that the rainfall of these 2 areas had an adverse trend. You don't mean adverse. It had a inverse trend. While they enjoyed a similar rainfall, they enjoyed similar rainfall from 50 to 100 ml. Okay, fine. However, as for England, it enjoyed a relatively moderate rainfall in 2018 from 70 to 125, while it had a great quantity of rain compared to Scotland and Wales. Okay, very brief analysis of England. You went to tons of details about Scotland and Wales, and then England just got one little itty-bitty sentence. So I think you could have done a little more here. You could have said, for example, that the rainfall in England was not marked by the same lows as was that of Scotland and Wales. In fact, its lowest point was 70 ml, which was recorded in May. Okay? In contrast, it had a number of peaks, primarily in July, in September, and in December, when for those months it reached approximately 125. So you really did need to give England, I think, a little more attention here. Not a ton more, but a little more, okay? All right, so go ahead and correct these essays, return them corrected, add to your error correction list, and send us another set, okay? I think you've got more essays with us. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw in your email. So I'll let you get to it, and I'll be waiting to see what you write next. Good luck.